Hi there. Today I'm going to be showing how to sew up one of my patterns. It's called The Child. So this is based off of what people are calling The Child or Baby Yoda from Disney's The Mandalorian. So that's what this is based off of here. So I'm going to show actually how to sew him up. One thing I believe in toy making is it's not just the pattern that really makes it, but it's actually how you stuff it and how you sew it up that really brings your character to life and what makes it look more like the model that you see on the picture. So I'm going to show you how exactly I sew this up, how I get the ears to look like they do, how I get the cowl looking like it is, the sleeves. I concave this portion because you do want him to stand up. So I show you how to do that. So this is just showing you how I personally will stuff and sew up parts to this. So I actually will try to put in the comment section what area I'm sewing up. That way, if you're just looking for a specific part that you're having trouble with, then I will actually show you in the comments where that timestamp is so you don't have to watch the whole video. I have a feeling it's going to be kind of a long video. So anyway, this is him. Now I have made a few alterations. This is my original pattern, prototype 1, and I've made a few changes since this that I'm going to be updating along with this video. So my husband's a big fan as well, and he made a few comments to help me kind of make it look more like the creature. So he said that he thought the ears should be a little bit bigger, so I added a few stitches. He said the cowl is a little bit too tight and it would look better if it draped a little bit better. So I did actually make those changes, and I think it looks a lot better. So here's kind of the change up. I actually don't have the ears attached. I ran out of this yarn, and the yarn that I have to work with is a little more matte, which I don't know if you can kind of see, but anyway, I do have the ears made up but not sewn on, but you can see the difference in the cowl here. Let me turn this off so you can maybe see better from this angle. So you can see the difference in the cowl. This one here, which one? This one here drapes a little bit more. It has a little bit more concave here, and it has the stitching along here as well to kind of look like the drape. If you look at a picture of him, you see the difference. So I also, on my third one here, did a little bit bigger eyes. These are 20 millimeter, whereas the one on this one is 15. So I'm going to kind of see the comparison. I think the bigger eyes are going to look better once I have the ears on it. Right now it looks like a little alien. But this is the one that we're going to work with today. So I'm going to switch my camera angle over and we'll get started. So here we go. Okay. So I'm first going to show you the body a little bit. So I haven't concaved him yet. If you look on my original, you can see how it's concaved like this. And I didn't concave this one quite as much. I'm going to show you how to get a little bit better. So when you stuff it, my head is pretty firm, but my body's a little bit more squishy. So you want to make sure you can tell the difference, that there's a little bit less stuffing. I tried to make sure the around here was stuffed, but that there wasn't a whole lot in the center here, because you want to be able to, if not, you're going to have it puffy and he's going to rock and fold over. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your string at the bottom, and I have sewn in all unnecessary pieces so I don't have a lot of yarn sticking out unless I'm going to use it for sewing up. So first I'm going to actually put my needle through the center, and I'm going to pull it out the back of his head here. And I'm not going to pull tight or anything just yet. One thing about toys is if you pull it tight in the wrong area, it's going to not quite give you the shape you want. So you want to actually push in, and this is true on any kind of body shaping or needle sculpting, they call it. You want to actually push in the part that you're sculpting and then pull tight. So then I'm going to pull until I feel the tug where my thumb is. I actually can feel the tightness, but you want to actually push first and then pull. So if it's not quite how you want it, but this is tight, I would just go ahead and secure this off and do a second passing. I kind of like where it's at, but that's what I found on this one and didn't get the concave look that I wanted. So I'm going to I came out this stitch. I'm going to actually go in one more stitch below so that it hooks. I'm going to come out the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to hook a stitch. And then I'm going to come out the front. What this does is it kind of brings a little bit of balance. If you pull too tight on the back, it'll make his head tilt backwards. So if I pull on the front too, it'll kind of even that out a little bit. So that's another reason for doing a second pass. So I'm going to make sure to hook against a different stitch. well, first, never mind. First, I'm going to actually concave it again and then pull that tight where I can feel it tightening. And then we're going to hook a stitch and bring it back through the bottom. So here I kind of am going to pass through a couple stitches back and forth a little bit just to kind of get it to secure. I recommend anytime you're trying to finish off to hook 3 times. So go back and forth 3 times. So one more passing through. And then I'm just going to make sure it's kind of at the end. You don't want a whole bunch of space when you're pulling through at the very last. So I'm going to kind of keep it on the end. And I'm going to pass it through the body. And this is why. You want it to kind of be at this point where there's not a whole lot of yarn left on the end, so that when you pull it through, it easily releases like that. If you have a real long string in there, it's going to pull weird. So I don't have my nice scissors up here. These are kind of crummy. Okay, so that's the concave portion. As you see, he stands up really nice. And the next, I'm going to do the head. So the thing with how you increase here, where you're starting off, I think it starts off with, I can't remember if the head starts with 3 or 6. What we're going to do here is we're going to kind of also push his head down. If you look at my first one, he's got a very flat head. My second one here is a little bit more pointy. Now the ears kind of make it look less so. So his head's, the ears kind of do help with that. But I didn't like how my second one didn't turned out a little more pointy. So we're going to kind of do the same thing with the top of the head. We're not going to concave it, but we are going to make sure that his head looks very flat. So I do kind of like doing one pass through here to kind of help seal up that portion. Then we're going to go right through the center. And you can kind of look at your doll and see if it's leaning one way or the other, and we can hook through the front. All of this front stuff is going to be covered by the cowl later. I'm not super concerned about it. Oh, no, okay, so see what I did is I didn't leave it towards the end, and I've got it sticking out the top. So now it's going to pull funny. So I'm going to try to find out which way is the, okay, loose end. There we go. Okay, so I've got it pulled through almost all the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of push down the head to where I want it to sit, making sure my finger is over where that thread is. And then I'm going to tug until I feel it tighten. You'll know what I'm talking about when you're actually doing it too. You'll feel it get tight where you want it to be. Okay, so he's got a nice round, flatter head up top. There's not pointing. And I don't need any extra. This wasn't a super big, it wasn't like concaving. So I'm just kind of go back and forth a couple times to kind of secure it. Like so. And again, I don't have to be super pretty on this part here because we are going to be covering this up. All right, and one more pass through. I'm going to kind of pass it through the back of the head. Make sure my end was short so it pulled through real nice. And I'm just going to snip it. So that's the main portion of the body. I'm also going to talk about the eyes real quick. So in my pattern, I say there need to be 6 stitches between them. So I can't really tell where my middle here. So what I did is I just took my marker when I was at row 16 and just put 1 here on the stitch in row 16. And then I just didn't count that first row, and then I counted 6 over. And then on the 7th one, I put another mark. So it's actually, there's a marker on 1 and a marker on 8 whenever I put the eyes in. So I'm just showing you, wanted to talk about that real quick. Okay, so his body is done. So we're going to work on, I'm going to do the cowl next. That's what I like to do. So there's a couple different ways you can do the cowl. I'm going to talk about all of them real quick. So here it is, my finished piece. Now you can, first way you can do it is you can go ahead and cast off, and then you'll have a cast on and a cast on, and you can just kind of fold them together and then whip stitch them, because this is going to be tucked inside. It's going to be it's in the middle here on the inside, so it doesn't have to be super pretty or anything. So you can cast off and whip stitch. What I did, and this is just because I don't know why I decided to do it this way. This is just how I decided to do it. What I actually did is I went ahead and pushed it through while it was still on the needles. And then I just picked up and cast it off. So I found my first one here. And you can see with the cast on row, you have these little loops. So all I did is I just, whenever I went to cast off, I just stuck my needle through here and just kind of pulled it through with my cast off row. And I just kind of did that over and over. So I could see that this is the loop I just went through. So I'm going to pick up on this loop. And that's how I decided to cast off the cowl. Like I said, if you really just cast off and then whip stitch it, that's going to be just fine. I honestly just kind of thought this was fun, and that's why I did it this way. So there's not really a super right or wrong way to do this portion of it. I've done this for other patterns, and I think that's why I chose to do it. For other patterns, it made a really nice clean edge here. So I made a real nice cast off edge on the other side too, and for that particular pattern it worked real well, and I just kind of remember that when I was doing it, so this is how I decided to. But a couple different ways you could do it. So I'm just kind of casting off, picking up my row. I thought this would kind of show you guys something new if you'd never done it this way. You could also graft too, so you could, instead of doing what I'm doing with casting off, if you really need a neat edge, which on this particular toy you don't, you can actually cut a long tail here and then put your needle and then, you know, do a Kitchener stitch to that over there. So that's just one other way you could do it. Okay. If I knew how to time lapse, I would totally time lapse through this, so I apologize. I'll put, like I said, I'll put some timestamps below so that you can skip through this portion if you'd like. Shouldn't take me much longer though. Okay. These are a larger set of needles as well. These are a size 7, whereas the body I knit with a size 4. What that does is my first version of it was really stiff material, which makes sense because with a toy you actually want really dense material because you don't want the stuffing to be coming through. So you're actually knitting with a size smaller needle than is recommended for that yarn if you're knitting a garment. So with worsted weight, usually a needle size 7 or 8 is what's typical if you're knitting a garment. So I actually switched to a size 8 needle and then lowered my stitch count a little bit to kind of get it to drape a little better. And then I added that stitch detail to make it look like more like how the character in the show outfit looked. So I do think it turned out way better to go up from a 4 to a 7 needle. It just gave that flexibility with the material and it just made the doll look a lot better. So that was kind of my decision making there. I do think the larger eyes are going to look better, which we'll see. We can do a comparison. I will probably put comparison photos at the bottom of the pattern when I update it here shortly, just so that people can make their own decision. I am also going to leave the original cowl in there as well in case somebody likes that look better. So I kind of don't like to take away people's options, especially once I've already published a pattern. If they saw the original and they really liked it, I'm not going to take that option away from them. So I try to keep, if it's just a personal taste update and not necessarily a mistake that I had, I usually try to leave that in my patterns. So almost done here. This one honestly reminds me of one of my first patterns I ever did, which was a baby dragon. This one reminds me a lot. There's a lot of the same kind of shaping to the head as the dragon. So it was kind of fun to revisit this idea. It's been many years since I've done that one. Okay, just 5 more stitches and I'll be done. And then I'll show you how to do the cowl. There's several options with how to do the cowl. You can just leave it free floating if you'd like, or you can secure it by sewing it to the body. I'm going to secure mine just because I like to put it in a position that I like, but I will do that after I add the arms. I don't want to do that before the arms because you want to make sure to get them positioned really nice. Messed that up a little bit. All right, last 2. Then I'll be done. And I'm going to want to leave a long tail here too when I'm done. So, all right, done with that. I'm going to get a longer tail because I am going to want to secure it to the body. If you're going to leave it free floating, you probably don't need this. but all right. So you have the seam here. You're actually going to want to turn that, twist that around to where that seam is the center of the middle of it. The center of the middle. Well, I think you guys can tell what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm just kind of moving it around, and if you look inside, you can see that that's at the middle. Is where I have this at. And then here is your detailing. So you kind of want to make sure your detailing is even here, that it does go up the whole thing. And we're going to take our little guy here, and we're going to kind of stretch this out and put it over his head. Okay, so there he is for the moment, like so. We've got his little detailing, and you want to kind of center that where you want it. I think his is a little off kilter actually in the show. So you can do it like that. You want to pull it up on his face where you want it. I have mine just below the eyes on the first one that I did. And his nose is kind of centered at the bottom of the eyes. So that's where you want to kind of leave a little bit of space so you can do your nose. So I think he's positioned just fine how he is. Okay, so next I'm going to do the sleeve right here. So I've got one already done. So I've got this sleeve already done here. See, he has just his hands poking out just a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Got my strings going everywhere. So I went ahead and already on the cast off row, which is this row here, I went ahead and sewed that up. So this is actually the cast on row that you're attaching to your little hand here. So I'm just going to put that over the hand and like so. So this part is a little tricky. Now, this doesn't matter quite so much because the hand is going to be stepped up there quite a bit. But if you're kind of a little bit of a perfectionist, what I do is I kind of loop under one of these stitches, the little bar between the stitches, and I come up through the little loop here of the cast on row. So you can see all the little loops going along here. I'm catching those loops. And I feel like that makes the material lie down better, and it just makes it look prettier whenever it is sewn to it. So I'm going to come up through here, and I'm going to go back down into the same one and go over one stitch. Now this one is where I cast on, so it's a little off kilter. So I'm just going to go and catch it over here. I'm coming up through the center of one of these, and I'm going to go back down into the exact same stitch and then come over another stitch. Go up through here like so, and I'm just going to keep going around like that. There aren't the same amount of stitches on the sleeve that there are on the arm, so sometimes you're going to want to go over a half. If you kind of just kind of line up and just see where the next stitch really catches at, and that's how I determine where it's at. So this right here seems like it lines up with this stitch, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to come up through there. So just kind of watch your stitches. They're going to guide you on where you want to come up. Like I said, this one looks like it's actually half, so I'm only going over a half to come up. And then this one goes over a whole. So I'm coming up through here, up through the cast on loop. And then I'm going down into the same stitch that I just came out of. So I'm going over a full stitch on this one. So I'm coming out here. I'm going to loop it through that loop and then go back down into the exact same stitch. So I'm just going to keep doing this throughout the whole entire thing until I come back around. And that just kind of leaves the material lying real flat and pretty. It's not quite grafting. It's kind of a cheater's grafting. So you could actually do a full graft if you'd like, but I don't think it's necessary to quite go that pretty when it's going to be a sleeve tucked up. But you don't really want those loops showing either, which is why I went through the loops. So, okay. So I've gone through a couple times. Once again, I'm just going through 3 times to kind of finish it off here. And then just snipping it. So if you would like, you can actually kind of make the sleeve puff up a little bit. If you wanted to leave your cast on row, your thread there, you could actually puff it up and then attach it with that. So it's just kind of whatever look you want to go for. So now I'm going to take my little guy here. and I'm just going to kind of stuff the sleeves up where I think I want them. So I'm just kind of stuffing it up here, and that kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. But before I attach anything, I stuff them both up, and I want to kind of look and make sure the cowl is how I want it to look as well. And this kind of gives me placement before I even thread my yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure the yarn is left draping out of it, because I'm going to want to go ahead and thread my needle before I even touch here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the cowl up, and I'm just going to try to leave it the best I can and just sew my arm on. And I'm just whip stitching is all I'm doing. So nothing fancy because it's going to be hidden anyway. But this way, the way I did it is it's ensuring that my arm is going to be placed exactly how I liked it. So again, I'm just going to go 3 times through the body. So 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to make sure my tail is really short and go back through 1 more time. Like so. I'm just going to snip this off. Okay, with all that moving around, I could have unhinged, and it looks like I did, my other arm. So what I'm going to do is just stuff it back up there and make sure it's where I want it to be. So kind of take the cowl down and make sure that I like the balance of the arms. So I do. I have it where I want it. So again, I'm going to take my needle, thread it through, and I'm just going to kind of move my cowl out of the way and just whip stitch my arm back through. And that's why I go ahead and slip on the cowl. I definitely want it on before the ears because the ears will make it really hard to get your cowl on. But I also do it just for the sake of the arms as well, because I just feel like you can really visualize how you want your character to be. Okay, so I think I've finally got it as secure as I want it to be. Let's do one more pass. It's kind of sticking. There we go. Okay, now pass through the body 3 times. 1, 2. And a lot of people will tell you that this is unnecessary, like weaving through the body 3 times. You do that on garments. A lot of people say you don't have to on toys and stuff, but I feel like it's really going to stay on. I have 3 nieces who have played so lovingly with the toys that I've made them, and I do learn that the appendages are what come off first. So I've done many repairs with them, and if you secure it just like that, it gives it a little bit more wear time. Okay, like I said before, once you put the ears on, it's kind of going to secure this. But if you would like to give the cowl a little bit more stability, you can actually attach it. So I don't recommend going through this top layer. You want to leave that drapey. If you do, you're going to see a lot of creases. So you're just going to try to go through the bottom layer only, not this top layer. So I'm going to kind of take my long string and pull it out the bottom, just because I feel like it'll work better from the angle of the bottom than up there. Okay, long string. And all I'm going to do is kind of make sure the cowl's where I want it. And all I'm doing is just kind of going through the body. I'm just kind of hooking like one string and going back through the body very lightly too. I'm not going to be tugging this very hard. We're just kind of lightly tacking it to the body. So don't pull it hard or anything. You just want to pull it to where it barely touches. Okay, so I'm going to go up through the arm a little bit. Just kind of keep the arm down and in place as well. Very lightly pulling. I'm not tugging. I'm just bringing the yarn through. I'm not tugging at all. So I'm just kind of grabbing one stitch here. And I'm just kind of going to go along and do that. Like I said, I'm not grabbing this upper part. I'm barely grabbing one little stitch down here. And all this is doing is keeping your cowl from moving around. But I'm also, you notice I'm not grabbing this bottom. I'm kind of grabbing the middle stitches because you want this to be able to move around quite a bit. So almost at the back again. Go down, back through here. Okay, I'm almost back to the beginning of where I started. About right here. All right. Back and forth a couple times. All right, keeping my short string, my short tail. Just push it through the body again. Sorry, like so. Snipping that off. Okay, and this piece here, I really don't have any use for it, so I'm just going to shove it through the body. One time. It's not really securing anything at all. It just needs to kind of go away. So, like so. Okay, so we've got most of him done. Exciting. So now I have the ears. I'm not sure. Okay, I have my nose right there. So I think the ears are probably the hardest part on this little guy. You're going to want some little needles because we're going to tack them in place. These are not the needles I like to use. These are sewing needles. I like to actually use a non-sharp, really long needles, but I can't find mine right now. So this is what we're going to go with. Okay, so if you look on my little guy who's done, he has the top part is just barely curved and the bottom part is curved a lot. And then if you look at how I sew it, I actually don't sew it straight down. I actually kind of sew it in a C shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pin it in that C shape there and pin this little flap on his ear. So if you look at pictures of the character, it actually goes straight across here. And then he kind of has these curvatures down his ear along the bottom part. So that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get that curvature of the little guy, his ears. So you're trying to get it kind of straight across the top with a curvature on the bottom. And I still do have a little bit of a lip, but it's not a whole lot. So that's what we're angling for on the ears. So let me I'm looking at my little dude here. And if you have a picture, I would pull up a picture while you're kind of doing this just to kind of see. So it looks like I have it starting, I want it on either side. I have it starting here, about right there. So I'm going to take my needle, and like I said, these are not the needles I usually use, and kind of pin it in place. So I like those long needles because they stay put a lot better. These come out really easy. So I'm going to do my top, and then I'm going to do my bottom part, and then I'll do the rest. So this part, I actually want to curve up the ear a little bit. And on mine here, I have it touching the cowl, the bottom of the ear, so that's why I'm going to go off of here as well. So I'm going to curve it. It's going to touch the bottom of the cowl here. I'm just going to stick my little needle here. See how this comes up? That's why I don't like using the sewing ones. Okay, looks like my pink ones are longer. So I'm also going to secure here. So I have where it curves, and then I have the base of the ear, and it already kind of forms its own C shape. So this is where you can see where it's forming. So you can decide if you want, maybe this isn't straight enough for you and you want to bring it up a little. This is where you can kind of shape your little guy and his ears and get it right and set before you start sewing. So you can actually pull the ear out, see if you like it better out a little, pull it back in, see if you pull it in, see it makes a bigger ear, and it kind of gives it a lot more depth. And if you look at the character, he has a lot of depth. So that's kind of what I'm going to go for. I'm going to kind of stick it out. And I'm going to take my needle kind of where my finger is, where I'm sticking it out, and I'm going to go ahead and pin it there. So that's going to give me my basic shape and help me out. So I'm going to put just a couple more pins just for security's sake, just to make sure that it doesn't come up while I'm sewing, because I really want to keep that shape nice. This is a really important thing anytime you're adding ears or any kind of appendages that need shaping, is to kind of look at it first and lay it out before you start sewing. Okay, so I need to pull my string out because it's kind of coming out the side here. So let me do that. Okay, so we're going to use a similar technique that I just showed you on the sleeves. And this is where this technique is really going to shine, because you want this to look as pretty as possible. So you see these little lumps here? This is from the cast on edge, and it looks kind of like a pearl lump. So that's actually what I'm going to come up through. So I'm going to start by poking in from my little cast on here, right where I want it to start. And I'm actually going to come So I want him to start about here. I'm going to hook it, and I'm actually going to come back up through the same little lump that my string is coming out of. And that's going to be my first one here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back down into the same thing, because what it does is when you go back down through the same, it pulls this stitch tight. So right now I still have the lump, but when I push it through, you're going to make that lump disappear. Okay, so back down, come up, and I'm going to come through this first little knot. And you might want to go ahead and pull it through before you go up through that little lump. It just kind of depends on how, basically how dense and thick your yarn is and if it's being malleable or not. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take out that pin. I don't need it. I've already got my placement. So I'm coming up through that lump, and I'm going to go down through the same stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of look, where's my next lump coming from? And I'm going to kind of want to come right up underneath it. Like so. All right, so come up through that little cast on right there. Like so. And go back down into the same hole that I came out of. So we're going to look for, where's our next one? Our next one's where the needle is. So I'm going to come up there. Okay, so if you see my little lump here? When I pull it tight, see how it pulls it down like it's a normal stitch? So it kind of almost makes it invisible. That's what we're going for. All right, so I'm going to come up through this one, and I'm going to go ahead and take my pin out. Bring it up. And I'm going to do this the entire way around the ear. And the thing is, with my my pins here, I don't have to worry about it moving around. I don't even really have to think about it, because I've already laid the groundwork for where the ears are going to sit. So that's really, really useful. Because now I'm not even thinking. The only thing I'm concentrating on is where do I need to match up my next little lump. That's all I've got to worry about. I'm taking out my pins. So I just need to work around the ear like that. And just keep doing it. All right, so back down into the same stitch that I came out of. And up through to match up with my next lump. So you notice there's this second little lump here, so don't get that mixed up. We're only going the lump that circles my upward stitch. So you can see my V shape, and you can see this lump is higher, and you have that little lower lump. So you're only going for this one that's encircling your V. Okay? So don't get those confused when you're doing them, because those secondary lower ones, they're going to completely go away when you secure these upper ones. Okay? Because this little guy, see how he's kind of disappearing? This is a technique you can use on all kinds of stuffed creatures. Anytime you are sewing a piece directly to the body, this will help just make it look so much neater and more professional looking. Okay, so my ear, I'm kind of pulling it a little too much, so I need to kind of watch what I'm doing. So those longer needles, they don't come out like that. And even if they do come out, it's such a long needle. Like these are so short that I only have a little bit of give. But with the really long needles, they can come up a little bit and it's not going to matter. All right, keep doing this all the way around. Okay. Again, I need to like up my video skills so I can learn how to time lapse and stuff. But at least you're getting the information, and that's what really matters at this point. Okay, almost done. I've just got a couple more to do. Come up through that lump. Back down the original stitch. Find my next one. Back down. I've just got like 2 more to do, because I want to get back through this one here. And then I want to get my little cast on edge too, which is right here. It's the last one here. Okay, so now I'm done, and I'm just going to kind of lace it back and through the center of the ear. One thing different that you could do, if you really wanted to, you could do some pink stitching through here to give them a little pink ear. I didn't really feel like it was necessary with the design, but if you really want to look a little bit more like the character, you could. Okay, so I've passed it through a couple times. One thing, whenever you're passing through and it's somewhere that's going to be showing, make sure you're not pulling here. I'm just going to kind of make sure it's invisible, but I'm not pulling, otherwise it'll create an indentation. Don't want. Okay, where to do with my scissors? Shoot, did I drop them? Oh, they're right here. Okay. So then I'm going to do the second ear the same way as the first ear, but for sake of time, I'm going to skip that for now and show you how to do his little nose. So I'm just getting a scrap piece of yarn here in the same color. And as you see on this little guy, here, this yarn was a little smaller, so it looks like this guy's just smaller, period. So I kind of did just 3 little loops, and I did them not quite below the eyes, but kind of on the bottom half of the eyes. That's where I kind of aimed for. And it looks like I went over, so there's one vertical stitch here, which I think was the center, and then went over half and half. So I'm not going over 3 stitches, I'm technically going over 2. So the center one, half over this way and half over this way. So I need to find my little center here. Looks like probably about right this little V. So I'm going to go over half a V and come up the other half of the V. So this is actually going to be my scrap yarn. So I'm just going to go back through the same exact places. This might be a little high. I'll have to look at it. Okay. He's a little high, so I'm actually going to go down one and just kind of tie them together. Okay, so down. I'm going to do my third one just kind of over these, like so. And if I don't like it, I can always redo it. Okay. I think that's fine for what I want to do. Might do a 4th one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down to kind of the bottom of the ear because I do want to secure this so it doesn't come loose. I'm just very gently giving him his little nosy. So I did 4 times on this one, but this one does seem to be a little bit bigger. I'm just going to go back and forth underneath the cowl here to kind of give it some security. Okay. And now I'm going to cut that. And I probably should have left a little bit longer tail than I did here. But when I push it through, it's actually going to come out back here. So I'm just going to push it back through the original stitch and bring it straight down below the cowl here. Okay. And I actually tighten that, so I'm going to untighten it just a little bit. All right, I'm going to do some really small stitches since I don't have a big tail. 2, this 3, I'm just going to push it through as far as I can. Okay, so all I have to do is attach my second ear. I'm going to do the same exact technique as I did with this ear over here. And then he'll be done. So I hope you liked my little tutorial here to show you kind of how he works out and how to get him to look like this guy. If you have any questions, you can always email me. If you see any mistakes in my patterns, please email me so I can update them. A lot of times I don't always get test knitters before I publish a pattern. Usually I will get some later, but I can't really ask people to hurry up and knit. So I kind of pass out to a few people and let them get to it at their own time. So if you ever see anything that's in error, please just let me know. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. So thank you so much for watching.